It's been 2 weeks and we have tons and tons to cover. We'll start with the Mueller report, and then we'll hit up many, many more issues that have taken place, including Bernie, AOC, and sadly, the burning down of the great Notre Dame. This is Matt Field, and this is Ditch Your Political Party Podcast. If you've been watching the news lately, obviously one of the forefront of everybody's mind is the Mueller report. There was obviously a blurb that took place right after it had been completed by General Attorney Barr, but all the Democrats dismissed it and all the Republicans said that it was what it was, right? My thing is why would Barr come out with something and say it was one thing and then it'd be discovered it's something else once it was released? I think that would be pretty silly, because you'd only have 2 weeks of notoriety until that came out if he was lying. So, as was probably expected by most, Barr wasn't lying. The information therein is not all that telling. It doesn't bring anything to light that is all that prosecutable. And of course, the Democrats are calling for impeachment, and they're calling for obstruction, and the Republicans are calling Trump the best man ever, which both are wrong. Again, this is the whole idea of ditching your political party, is that you got to stop listening to that shoulder angel or shoulder devil that tells you whatever your political party is thinking, you must mindlessly follow. So, what actually happened in the Mueller report? Well, it's about what Barr said. Trump hadn't done anything that really prevented him from, it didn't do anything that was illegal. And he did a lot of really dumb stuff. He did a lot of things that were inappropriate. He did a lot of things that were, he lied to the media. He did a lot of different things. And, I mean, let's be clear, Trump, and I've never been fuzzy on this, Trump has never been a very good guy. He's never been a good guy throughout his life. I mean, if you voted for him, you had to have known that. But I mean, it's not prosecutable. He's just not a very nice guy, not a very clean guy, right? And lying to the media isn't anything. There's nothing wrong with lying to the media. It's just lying to the media, and that's wrong. That's about it. But it's not prosecutable. So the Trump report comes out, and they review through it, and basically everything that Barr had said is correct. He said that there's nothing they can bring to prosecute. There's no evidence of obstruction. And the main thing, like we talked about 2 weeks ago, is that, oh, by the way, the reason that I haven't done it for 2 weeks is I had a wedding. So that's what happens sometimes. I thought about trying to get it done, but, it's not like I'm CNN or Fox News, right? Who knows? You'll live, you'll be fine. Just don't watch the news. The news is garbage. Just listen to us. So, Trump, there has been no obstruction, like we said last time. There hasn't been any collusion. Again, collusion isn't anything it's not prosecutable anyway. The main thing here was obstruction, and there was nothing that Trump actually did that was obstruction. He had a lot of emotions. There were a lot of different things that happened, which was justifiable. Everybody was going after him about this, that, and the other. They had made up the fake Steele dossier that was basically the center of the FBI investigation, and is what everybody went after for years. But it was complete garbage, and I think most people knew that anyway. But there was nothing in the Steele dossier that did anything, and now here we are. There was no collusion between Russia and the Trump campaign, and there's really nothing that we didn't know in the report. So, the big difference, and then people will go back and they're talking about, well, what was the difference between Clinton and Trump? And if you begin to ask that question and you are a Democrat, then you have to actually begin to consider the possibility that Clinton should have been prosecuted and she should have been thrown in jail or fined or whatever it was. And so when you open up that Pandora's box, then you have to deal with the other issues that follow. Now, I personally believe that Clinton should have been pursued, because the biggest portion with obstruction requires intent. And the big difference between Trump and the Clinton investigation is intent. So Trump had to actually have intent to obstruct justice. And there was no intent involved. The only time that he suggested that they stop the Mueller investigation, the only time that he suggested all these different things go by, he never actually acted on, and he just said something. You know, it really comes down to the action. You know, you can begin to gather intelligence and other things like that based on what people say, but it's nothing until something actually formulates. And that's the same thing that happened with Trump. He was frustrated that people were going after him. He's frustrated that people were going after, you know, his name, whether it be good or bad. And so he's just like, well, whatever I can do to try and get rid of this. You know, he didn't fire anybody that was in a key position. He didn't get rid of, you know, he didn't do any of these things that potentially could have obstructed justice. But of course, the Democrats are still calling for it, which is silly, and it doesn't need to be done. There was nothing here to begin with, and the fact that they're still trying to draw this out, I really just going to hurt them for the elections. I'm not really sure why they continue to do this, because all they are is focused on Trump, and so everybody's eyes are on Trump constantly. And so be that good or bad, that's what's going to be in your brain. You know, the man has a way of making sure every party's talking about him constantly. So, you know, the old rule of thumb, there's no such thing as bad press, right? And he's always on the news. So Trump definitely dominates the circuit no matter what happens. So whether that's by design or not, I don't know. Back to the investigation. The problem with Clinton's investigation is that there was no obstruction that was needed. It was just the poor handling of classified data, and there is no need for intent there. If you're careless with data, then that opens you up to that scrutiny, to that litigation. And that's neither here nor there, because no one's going to do anything about it. But that is the difference between the Trump investigation and the Hillary investigation. So don't be fooled. The Mueller report is just they're just blowing smoke. There's nothing there. There's nothing there on either side. If the Republicans are claiming some amazing win or this, that, or the other because of Trump, they're just playing to their angle. And if the Democrats are saying that he obstructed and he should be impeached, they're just playing to their angle, because there's nothing in this report. It's a big fat garbage report. All it says, and the only reason it matters is because for the last 2.5 years, everyone has been talking about it. No one has been able to stop, and they've spent so much money on it that, you know, it becomes well, and it's been the main focal point of the Democrats anyway. And for a while there was the main focal point of the Republicans, because they were convinced that there was something wrong there too, because no one was sure about Trump when he first got in. But through time, it was pretty clear that nothing was actually there. Now, could there be something there? I don't know. That's for the ages to determine. We don't have evidence to actually suggest anything like that. So you can be conspiratorial if you wish, but it's not going to get you anywhere until you actually have evidence. So there you go. There's the Mueller report. I'm not going to speak much more on it, because like I said, I think it's a big nothing burger. There's nothing in it. There's nothing in it that does anything. You know, the main report that originally came out talked about all the indictments that took place. And that's, you know, like I said, if you're a typical DC politician, if someone digs deep enough, they're going to find something on you, and they'll be able to indict you for something. And the majority of those people weren't put in jail or anything like that. They just had fines and other things they had to take care of. So it is what it is, and it's done. And it shouldn't be really drawn out any further, because there's no reason to pursue it any further, because there's no prosecutor that would take it. They wouldn't be able to make a case for obstruction. And if that's the way the Dems decide to play it, then that's the way the Dems decide to play it. You know, whatever. But I'm just saying that if you are a Democrat or you're a Republican, don't be fooled by this report, because it's nothing. It's nothing. It's nothing. And it shouldn't be reported on. The only reason it is being reported on is because the mainstream media is super biased on either side. Which, I mean, if you're watching Fox News or you're watching CNN or MSNBC, they're obviously going to there's no such thing as journalists very often anymore in the mainstream media that actually function as a journalist. They're not looking for the truth. Actually, they're just looking to reinforce a narrative, which is unfortunate, because where do you go for news except for me? That's why we're booming, right? So anyways, so that's the way that it goes. So we're going to move on to a couple other things here, kind of jump around, because we have 2 weeks to cover that we didn't have. But before we do that, are you a business owner? And you've heard me give this spiel before, but excess supply list is where businesses need to go. So if you have inventory of a product, components, or ingredients that you no longer need, and you are dying to liquidate, that inventory so you can invest more effectively in your business? Is it to the point where you're going to shut your doors? If this is the case, if it's super extreme where you're going to shut your doors, or you've just got some excess stuff laying around, list it on excess supply list. They've got a brokerage portion of it where you can list with the brokerage and they actively go out and search for people to buy. You can also just post it on the website. You just go to excesssupplylist.com, click on publish ad for free, and you can get it done. It'll have you set up a quick account. It takes 5 seconds, and then you literally have nothing to lose. You just post it, and then hopefully someone clicks on it. So, if you are looking to get rid of your excess or surplus supply, get your cash back in your pocket, and go to excesssupplylist.com. Again, that's excesssupplylist.com. So there was a lot of things that took place over the past 2 weeks. Some of them because of the way the news cycle works, most of you have probably forgotten about, and it's probably pretty crazy. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen, she was eventually kicked out of her position, and Trump has this weird issue of throwing his employees under the bus, and now the mainstream media is trying to blackball her. So this is the problem I have with this. The reason I wanted to bring it up is that, Kirstjen Nielsen, she was a fine Homeland Security advisor, and I think a lot of people at the White House are literally walking around trying their very best to ensure that they don't really tick off Trump, because Trump seems to be like a loose cannon. I mean, look at the number of people that he's fired and the number of people he's let go. I mean, that happens in pretty much any circumstance, any presidency, any administration. It just happens. People will lose their jobs because of political reasons, and you saw it you've seen it in every administration. A tenure for some of these people are a full 4 years with that particular president. That's as long as it gets. There's no way you're getting past that, because they're going to use whatever person they can get in there. But this is the problem with Trump, is he literally will just go through people like it's nothing. And that's a problem I have with him, is that he is a loose cannon, and with his staff, and there's people that are criticizing some of the Democratic folks as they're coming in and they're running as being loose cannons with their employees. But I mean, Trump's the exact same way, So again, it depends on the position you're coming from on what you're reporting. But at the end of the day, Trump doesn't know what he's doing with his employees half the time, and if he gets ticked off enough, then he's going to get rid of you, even if you are defending him till the death, So the mainstream media is trying to blackball her, which is terrible. Just because you've worked with the Trump administration does not mean, if you got a call and they asked you to be, Secretary of State or Secretary of Homeland Security, you really don't think you would take that job? I think most people would take that job if they were, if they're in line for it. Why wouldn't you? And of course, I don't think it'll stick. The mainstream media, like I said, this is gone. No one's even thinking about it anymore. So there's that. This isn't the last one. I mean, we still have, about a year and a half before the Trump presidency potentially could be over, or will continue. It really just depends on how the election goes. But, there'll probably be some other poor soul that gets dropped out. And the same thing happened with the Attorney General, So this is just the way that it goes in the Trump administration. Not the best place to be if you're an employee. So with, leading into some of these other issues, I want to make clear that, again, this all comes back to the way that you're thinking politically. We're going to talk about Bernie. We're going to talk about federal judges. We're going to talk about Bibi Netanyahu and as prime minister. And if the only way this is actually going to make sense is if you're able to take your political ego, and put it to the side. And that's one of the hardest things that people have to do, is to actually listen to something objectively and to understand it objectively, because the truth is the truth. And I know that people are so interested in their truth, which we talked about maybe last week, the week before, but there is no such thing as your truth. There is truth and there is not truth. There is falsehoods and there are, there's the actual truth. And that the problem is that people are are getting themselves so confused, and others are confusing them by saying, hey, well, this is my truth. There's no such thing as your truth. Facts remain facts regardless of what you think. We talked about gravity last time, right? And it didn't matter that back in the day when people said that the earth was flat, the earth didn't magically become flat. Truth is truth regardless. And if you believe otherwise, then you're just being silly. So Bernie calls for people to vote in jail, right? I just want to call this one out. Okay, so because when you see all these different attempts from either side of the aisle trying to make a move on voting, they're trying to do whatever they can. Okay, they're trying to do whatever they can to vote, to get as many votes as they can possible. I don't know why Bernie would suggest this exactly, but the fact that, I mean, you know, he wants Medicare for all, he's a socialist, all that sort of thing. And I can assume that the majority of the people in jails haven't done a very good job taking care of themselves. So them eventually leaving, you know, getting out of jail, they would have something for them. I mean, that's the only angle I can see with Bernie, but, you know, who knows? Just seems like a really odd concept, because if you got murderers and you got all these terrible people in there, I guess they're not terrible people, they just made really, really bad decisions constantly throughout their life. And this idea that he wants people to vote in that situation, you really think that they're sound enough to do something like that? No. When you have made your way to federal prison or jail in general, you lose your rights. That's why you are locked behind bars. Look, if we're not going to let them go out to the mall by themselves, why are we going to let them vote? So, anyway, my opinion, I suppose. And that is also Bernie's, but Bernie holds the opposite side. So Bernie has been gone after a little bit. He is the presumptive front runner, which is still pretty surprising to me, just because of the fact that he is a socialist. He has no problem saying he is a socialist, and it seems like millennials view that very favorably. I don't know why. I'm a millennial. I don't know why people view socialism favorably, but I'm also a business owner. I've really gone out there and gone for it, and we've been successful at doing that. So, you know, I'm not really sure what's going on there, but they were reviewing his taxes, and it turns out that old Bernie's a millionaire, and which was surprising to some, because he's saying they're going to take their taxes and get rid of them, and some of them questioned, well, why don't you just pay more now? And, you know, he kind of chuckles and said, well, that's not a law, you know, but if you want to soldier something, if you want to be that leader, then maybe you should start today and do those things. But people wasn't really interested in hearing that, and who knows, maybe his actual proposal is going to be like Obamacare, where let's make the entire nation do it, but not Congress. You know, so it may be one of those deals, who knows. But when they questioned about him being a millionaire, he said, well, you know, I wrote a best-selling book. And if you write a best-selling book, then maybe you can be a millionaire too. So he goes after capitalism constantly and talks about the dangers of capitalism, and now he just promotes capitalism. I mean, unknowingly, because he wrote a best-selling book. And this is the case with anybody. Let's be real. Come on. You talk about socialism, but if you had a best-selling book, or you had a business that was growing really, really well, if you decided to take that risk and to do something more, and you become huge, you really think that you would feel the need to pass that money on to people that are doing nothing? Or, you know, and then if you want to pass that money on to people that are doing something, that have a good purpose, then that is your choice, and that's good for you, you know. But if you are actually suggesting that people who believe you should redistribute that wealth is a good idea, then you're just fooling yourself. Have you ever heard of anybody that was willing to do something like that? I want to share a quick story here, because this lands right in line with all the different things that take place with this socialistic type idea. You know, we do studies and we do different things like that, and I think this helps put it into perspective. Back in the 1970s, there was a study that was conducted, and this study was with mice. Okay, and you know, it's not that mice are mice, right? But for some reason we have a tendency to experiment on them. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's the information. What they did is they created a tiny Eden for mice. It was a place everything was included in the mouse dream paradise, right? It had food, housing, supplies. Everything was in abundance. they had a goal. They wanted it to grow to be, it was a play, let's see, in it there were placed 4 pairs of mice. There was room for 4,000 mice. They wanted to take 4 pairs of mice, so a total of 8 mice, and they wanted that to grow to 4,000, right? Every 55 days, the population doubled. But when there were a little over 600 mice, things began happening. Not only did the population fall off, but big problems arose in the mouse society. The mice were becoming lazy. Many appeared greatly distressed, some utterly frustrated. The behavior became quite unpredictable. The making of nests dropped off. Some of the mice began to eat each other. The planned mouse population never did climb to 4,000. They had reached slightly more than half that figure when reproduction came to a complete halt. The mouse society turned into an emotional mob. The population in Mouse Eden was now dropped to a little more than 600. No new mice babies were being born. The mouse society is doomed, and not a mouse shows any interest in saving its dying paradise. That's what happens. It is similar. Now, granted, I'll concede the very fact that we are not mice, right? But when everything is given to you and you have nothing to work for, think of the emotional state you would be in. I feel good when I accomplish a goal. I do not feel good if I sit on my behind all day long and watch television. I might enjoy some simple pleasure of whatever show I'm watching, but at the end of the day, deep down, I don't have any happiness. And that's the same idea with what is being suggested here, is that socialism is going to solve your problems, it's going to take care of those people, and that all this money that other people are making is going to save their lives. Now, there's a degree to which people need help. They need to grow, they need to develop to the point where they can take care of themselves. But at some point, you have to be proactive. You have to do something. Because if not for money, then for your own well-being. And just so turns out that most of the time when you do something that is good for society and good for others and good for yourself, you'll get paid for it. So the whole idea, I mean, this leads into AOC and the idea that she's going to do some amazing things with her Green New Deal. So we'll jump into her real quick. She says that she used, last week probably, she said that there will be blood on our hands if we don't vote for the Green New Deal. Although all the Democrats, when they voted in there, except for 4, those 4 voted no, and all the Republicans voted no, and then all the others voted present. So then she comes out with this video just the other day that talks about all these different things that had happened. She's moved forward in the future, I don't know, 10, 20 years, and she's talking about how she was able to bring about the Green New Deal, and she'd been on the bullet, she just got off the bullet train, and talking about all these different things, and how they couldn't find enough workers to do all the different things that they needed to do, and all this. So the main key thing in here that AOC is missing, and she always seems to miss, and that basically everyone else in Congress seemed to miss, is the very fact that we do not have any money. We have $0. In fact, actually, we'd be in a pretty good spot if we were at $0. We're at negatives of dollars, right? $22 trillion in debt. Her proposal would drown. I mean, we're already drowning, right? But it would drown us even further. And so she's getting all up in arms because she's upset that people aren't supporting the Green New Deal yet again. And nothing should happen with this. I think this is ridiculous that anyone would move towards the Green New Deal, because it comes back to the same idea that in her proposal, everyone was going to be able to work, and if they didn't want to work, then we would provide something for them anyway. This is the whole Mouse Eden thing, is that when people get everything that they want, they begin to care very little on those around them. They look at themselves much more than the people outside themselves. And the only way you're effective in this world is if you look outside yourself. You have to look outside yourself and do things that potentially you don't necessarily want to do, or you do things that are for the greater good. This is not for the greater good. When you enable people, it just makes them more enabled, and it just deteriorates society. So AOC, that's not the only brilliant thing she did today. Again, I bring up AOC because everyone talks about AOC, and I'm still perplexed as to why she actually won in her district. But perplexed in the sense that if you were looking at the facts, you would not have elected her. Okay, but if you were looking at the letter next to her name, a D, and you voted her just because she's a Democrat, then you've got a problem, because you clearly did not vet your candidate, who is now your congresswoman. So because everything she says, everything that's reported on, it doesn't make sense. Okay? The Green New Deal is probably the biggest one, obviously, but then she goes, and then, of course, she talks about there'd be blood on her hands, but none of her Democrat friends are actually voting for her policies either. So, and then she talks about how she wants, and so her problem is that she hasn't really reintroduced, she sent out that movie, but she hasn't introduced the actual policy that she wants to do for the Green New Deal. She hasn't given any parameters. She keeps talking about how something needs to happen, but she hasn't written anything that makes any sense yet, that anyone would support. Well, not, and I'm not saying written anything. She hasn't actually written a bill. She hasn't put together a bill yet. So I don't know if she's waiting for other Democrat friends to come over and help her write this, but that's basically where she's sitting. She's upset that nobody's doing anything, but she hasn't done anything herself, which basically sounds like a plan. So if this is the plan you're interested in, it'll never get off the ground because she'll never do anything. It's the same thing that's going to happen with everything else, right? But the fact that she made that movie is so telling, and it's so humiliating, because it will be extremely humiliated when she starts her making that movie. Can you imagine the political ramifications that will take in the future, particularly if she decides to go for any larger office than what she's in right now? I shouldn't say a larger office, but another office. It doesn't matter what that office is. Anyone can go after her for that. I mean, she's plastered herself all over the wall. Now, the problem is unfortunately, unless you are thinking critically and you aren't thinking with your political party on your shoulder, then you would actually view what she's done and not elect her again. But let's be real. People aren't thinking clearly anymore. They think along the lines of my team needs to win more so than my nation needs to change for the better. And how does that happen? By logical, critical thinking. Okay? And we got to start with things like the budget. And the ideas like this, as ambitious as they are, they do not address any real problem whatsoever. You have to get to the root of the problem. The root of the problem is our budget, is the idiocracy that takes place in Congress every day, the amount of money that's spent. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Because what's going to happen is it can continue to build, and then we're all going to be taxed up the wazoo to pay for all the debts that those in the past did. Those things that in the past, those people voted for these things, and now we're paying for it. Whoever wanted that? The climate change folks out there, right? I think there's a level of climate change that takes place. I don't think it's at the rate that people believe it is, and I think we can affect it to one degree or another, but I don't think it's going to be increased near as quickly as I believe. Like AOC, 10 years down the road, we're in trouble, or 12 years, whatever it is. And so, that's the big thing, is that if we are going to allow ourselves to get sucked into this hole where we believe that these different issues are taking precedent because we're voting along the lines of what our political party is saying, then we're not going to be very successful in changing our nation. So she also goes after Dan Crenshaw, who, for not supporting 9/11. If you don't know who Dan Crenshaw is, he lost his eye from an IED because when 9/11 took place, he went over and he fought. And he supported every bill to help take care of, to help the supporters and all these different things. So all the things coming out of AOC's mouth, I'm not sure what it is doing exactly, because she doesn't do any research. She doesn't do anything. And this happens time and time again. So I plead with those of you that are her constituents, she doesn't have your best interests at heart, because if she did, she would actually say things that are true. And that's the case with anybody. That's the case with any politician. And again, this is where you have to ditch the R and the D idea and start voting for something that actually matters. People that think logically, that are willing to make some real change. And that is difficult. It's very difficult. It's going to be very hard. And you're going to probably need a president to wield the bully pit in a way that's never been wielded before. But time will tell. obviously, to our demise, or to our success, I guess. So we're going to jump into a couple other items of political importance here. But before I do that, do you live the paleo, keto, or AIP, or SCD diet? Are you struggling with the autoimmune disease, with an autoimmune disease, and has medication stopped working? Have you tried to remove inflammation from your diet and body? Autoimmune health and nutrition doesn't claim the ability to magically heal you, but if you're willing to look at things holistically, you can begin to overcome some of these issues. Autoimmune health and nutrition was started when a sister educated a brother helped a sister. The line of 100% compliant paleo, keto, SCD, and AIP proteins are #1 on the market. They are the cleanest option available and taste great. Go to autoimmunehn.com and use promo code DYPP at checkout and get 20% off your entire order. If you have tried the conventional way of healing, let autoimmune health and nutrition help you along the holistic path. Go to autoimmunehn.com. That is autoimmunehn as in health and nutrition.com, and use promo code DYPP at checkout. Again, autoimmunehn.com, DYPP at checkout for 20% off your entire order. We've got a couple of updates here. Things that have been drowned, obviously, by the Mueller report. But you've got Julian Assange. And this is the WikiLeaks guy. The reason I want to bring up Julian Assange is this is another example of how politics can get in the way of actual truth. You've got the Republicans and you've got the Democrats, of course. And the two of them have used Julian Assange and the information that he has delivered to the media and to the public for their advantage at one point or another. Julian Assange was arrested in London just a few days ago. Ecuadorian officials kicked him out after 7 years of having a diplomatic visa in that area. I mean, it's literally in London, but you know how they distinguish one little piece of land theirs for whatever reason. So they kick him out. He gets taken by the London officials and he's extradited, I believe, to the United States to face trial. So Julian Assange, and the reason he's going to face trial is because, first off, he has done some terrible, terrible things in his life. Some very skeezy, terrible, terrible things, like, rape and other things like that. And he's continued to, basically function in the espionage realm for quite some time. Why the Ecuadorian, embassy was keeping him up, I'm not entirely sure on that. Maybe they served some particular purpose for him, or he served a particular purpose for them, and whatever reason. Now, Julian Assange, he's a terrible guy. What he was doing was wrong. Leaking all this classified data, leaking all these emails, doing all this different stuff. This is bad. This is bad. Anyone doing this to you, you would hate them. Right? If anyone scooped up all the information that you had ever done and they put it up on the internet, you would hate it. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't mean if you're squeaky clean. No one deserves to be in your business. Right? And this is what Julian, and that's the least of his worries, in my opinion. But anything that Julian Assange has done in that realm is wrong. However, during the Clinton and Trump election, the Republicans backed Julian Assange like he was a saint. They believed what he was doing was good, that he was bringing something to the public that the public needed to see. Blah, 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 blah. No. This is what prosecutors would need to see. And that's what prosecutors had done. They had seized the emails and they had done these different things, right? So, Julian Assange is not a good guy. The problem is, too, is then, not much later, he started sending out information about this whole Russian collusion thing. And so then the Democrats were like, oh, maybe Julian Assange has something. So then they make him basically a saint, doing the different things he's doing. So how on earth can a guy who's doing illegal stuff and has done some pretty atrocious things in his past as well, all of a sudden be made a saint on either side at any given time? Politics. Obviously, it's stupid. It's complete, utter garbage. If you are believing someone like Julian Assange is a good guy when he's done all the terrible things that he's done, the only reason you would think that is if he's basically promoting your side. And at any given point, both the Democrats and the Republicans thought Julian Assange was doing a good thing because they promoted their agenda. But that's wrong. Again, this comes back to Julian Assange does not have his own truth. Julian Assange has been a bad guy for a long time, and now he's going to get what's coming to him. And it's the same thing that when you've decided to promote what he's done. I mean, literally, I don't know if the Democrats did this, but I know the Republicans, some of the pro-Republican, folks, they actually brought Julian Assange on to the program. I mean, he wasn't there, but he was, he was satellite, and he was talking about all these different things that he had released. Can you imagine? You've got to feel silly about that. You've got to feel silly by the fact that this guy is now getting arrested and he's going to be tried for his crimes because he did something wrong. You have to see things. You can't. People are looking in gray constantly. You've got to see things as black and white. Something is wrong and something is bad, right? Now, the solutions to some things, there may be. I don't want to say gray, but there's many different options to create a solution to different problems. But you can determine if something is good or bad. What Julian Assange was doing was bad. It does not matter if it promoted your cause. It does not matter any of these different things. So I hope he he is appropriately prosecuted. He's given a fair trial, but that he ultimately is punished for his crimes, because that's what should happen. Now, we have, I want to make a quick blurb on Israel and Bibi Netanyahu. He was just elected as prime minister. He's been the longest prime minister in standing history, and I guess good for Bibi. I'm not super familiar with all the Middle Eastern type things, but I know that Israel has always been an ally to the United States, and that at any not at any cost, but that should be maintained. And I'm really confused as to why there's one side fighting Israel and the other side is not fighting, is trying to promote Israel. I don't understand why the Democrats and the Republicans are always on opposite sides with Israel. I mean, you look at the difference between what happened with Barack Obama and Israel, and then Donald Trump and Israel, and they're completely opposite. Obama was trying to push him away all the time, but then you've got Obama that was doing anything he was. Sorry, my wife texted me. Then Obama was doing anything he could to put down Israel. So I don't know. I'm confused by the whole concept of what's happening here with Israel. But I think if we're going to be allies with them, then let's be allies with them. And we shouldn't be sending over, like Obama did, send over people to try and tear him down during his elections. If we're not going to interfere with elections, let's not interfere with elections, regardless of who the individual is. Again, there's right and wrong, right? Let's stick to it. Doesn't make any sense. I'm not Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not anything. I'm unaffiliated. I'm a logical thinker. So if you like logic, then this is the place for you. So I'm going to hit just a couple of different things. I got two more items I want to hit. One of them is Ilhan Omar. And I think what she said is despicable. Now, I think there's a lot of cloud surrounding the whole 9/11 attacks. And when I say that, I'm not going to really get into it. I think there's a lot of minutia that has been ignored, that shouldn't have been ignored, that should have been addressed, and it wasn't. In any case, several thousands of people died during those attacks. And the ongoing effort against the Middle East obviously killed many other people. And for Ilhan Omar to suggest that 9/11 is some people did something is a really terrible thing to say, because she is essentially excusing those people that committed this atrocity, and the people that died during that process are secondary. So I don't understand where she gets off exactly, but I think it's pretty clear to me with all the different things she said. Her claiming, these different things. She's very anti-Semitic. She's very, and people can spin that all you want, but it's just like if someone goes in and calls, someone that's black the N-word, right? You don't say that. That's wrong. It doesn't matter who you are. You just don't say it. You don't try and spin it. And it's the same thing if someone comes in. It's not as bad to come in and call a white guy a cracker, right? But it should be. Why would it be any different? And so, Ilhan Omar going after the Jews, Ilhan Omar going after Israel, doing all these different things, saying some pretty terrible things toward them, saying they've got dual citizenship, saying they've got people in their pocket, all this sort of thing. And it's all directed in one direction. So if you don't believe that she has some anti-Semitic skew to her, then you're just fooling yourself. Because she does. So, but the big thing on here that I want to hit is people are starting to say that when people are opposing Ilhan Omar, that they are inciting violence. Inciting violence. So if someone is claiming speech is violence, is one of the worst things you can do. Okay? Violence is defined as behavior involving physical force intended to hurt, damage, or kill someone or something. It does not have anything to do with the way you feel, right? If you say, hey, you're dumb, and people probably tell me I'm dumb, right? Yelling at me right now, Matt, you're dumb. Okay, fine, whatever. But you're not inciting violence. No one's coming after me. No one's going to hurt me. But there's this big thing happening right now where they're trying to smear together inciting violence and speech being the same type of concept. They're not. If you begin to fade that whole concept, then there goes the First Amendment. Because now anything you say, if it's considered violence, then it is a crime. But violence is a physical act. It is not. It's physical force intended to hurt. Now, unless they go back and change that definition for thousands of years, which is what they did which is what the Democrats and the lefts like to do, is they love to go out there and they love to change the definition of words and make their own new definition. So now they have some level of reference. That's what they love to do. But if they're going to do this one's going to have some serious ramifications for them as well. Because they will be inciting violence as well when they say things like she did. Ilhan Omar will be inciting violence up the wazoo if you talk about the way she speaks. Because hers is much more damaging than anything else that anyone else has said about her. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, and I don't think... The problem is the Democrats have this massive force. When I say Democrats, I should say the left, has this massive force of the mainstream media coming behind it that are going to back them up. The Republicans have the same sort of thing. It's just not as large on the mainstream media side of things. In many ways, Fox News will come and back them up, and other outlets will really back up the Republicans sometimes when they say different things, but it's not as strong as what the left has going for it. So, but let's just be clear. If you're going to define speech as violence, then we're entering a whole new realm. And now anything anyone says to you that you feel as though is violence, you're now going to have yourself a world of hurt. If something like that is put into law, you're going to have some serious problems. It's the same thing with pronouns and different stuff like that. When they put something like that into law, it is impossible to live. Anything's impossible to live. Anyone can be offended at any moment for any reason. There is no way we can police that. And last, I'm going to end on a sad but a good note. Is that, of course, Notre Dame? We heard that it burned down, and France holds a special place in my heart. I was an LDS missionary. Well, I was a missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in France. I served in southern France, so I wasn't actually in the northern part, but I grew to love those people over there, and it's really sad to see something that historic, that great, be burned to the ground the way that it was. And the cause is still unknown, and I'll be interested to hear what it was, but to hear that there was 100 million euros pledged to help rebuild it is quite the act. It's quite awesome to see, and to see that force going behind it. Now, those that are trying to say that it was a good thing, you're just a fool, because there's nothing good about something that beautiful and that good being burned to the ground. Now, there have been people that have allowed it to serve for different purposes in the past, and those were the people. But this stands for more than just what others have construed it for. It's the same thing with the White House, the same thing with any of these different national monuments we hold. They stand for something good. And now, whether or not other people have used it for some other perverse reason has nothing to do with what they stand for today. So my heart goes out to France. and I hope everything will go well. In fact, I will be visiting there soon, so I'm excited to see what's going on. Anyways, that was a mouthful, but we got it done pretty quick with all the different things that happened. Think of the amount of time you save just by coming on to Ditch Your Political Party podcast to see what's going on, because this is where the news is at, right? You don't have to listen to it 50 million times over by watching the 24-hour news cycle. Just go live your life. Go enjoy yourself. Don't let politics bog you down. Come to us. We'll tell you what the logical view of it is, and then you can get on with your life. So, again, this is Matt Field with Ditch Your Political Party podcast. Like us, comment, follow, subscribe, do whatever you can to help support us, because we want to help make sure that the news is properly reported so people understand that it isn't politics that govern their lives, but it's the good principles that they understand that can affect the lives of many. All right. Thanks, guys.